Thanks for tuning in today to Meet the Candidates 2018. Today our guest is Reggie Thomas, Democratic candidate for the 6th District of the U.S. House of Representatives. As a reminder, the primary election is Tuesday, May 22nd, and the winners of the Democratic and Republican primaries will face off in the general election on Tuesday, November 6th. Get out to vote, but remember also on primary day to tune into FPB TV later that night for all the election results. Reggie Thomas, thanks for coming in today.
John, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We really appreciate your time. I know that you know Frankfort because we had this conversation just a few minutes ago before we got started. And to a reminder our viewers at home, we taped this the last couple of days of March. And so as we play this back in April and May, you never know how things change and move. So as a reminder, folks, it's late March for us. You know a lot about Frankfort. Maybe some folks out there that don't know you. So who's Reggie Thomas and why is he running for U.S. House of Representatives?
Well, let me tell you, John, first of all, I have a rich Frankfort legacy here. My great-grandparents moved here. My great-grandfather was actually a physician here in Frankfort at the turn of the last century, going to the 1900s. My great-grandfather was a physician here. My maternal grandfather grew up here. Both of my grandparents went to school here at Kentucky State, as did my parents. So, John, frankly, all of my life, I've been coming to Frankfort. I mean, I've been in this city, as long as I can remember. And I've been an employee at Kentucky State since 1984. I have several friends here. I'm in and out of Frankfort almost on a daily basis. And as you know, I'm a state senator now. So I am very, very familiar with Frankfort and have been all of my life.
Well, we appreciate you coming. So I think we can establish that Frankfort and Franklin County is obviously the very most important county in all the 6th District. I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm certainly one of them. As Frankfort is certainly near and dear to my heart. And I failed to mention that my great-grandparents and my grandparents were members of St. John AME Church.
Okay.
So I want to get that in, that I have a family history with St. John AME Church here in Frankfort.
Right. It's a pretty big district. Go all the way up to Flemingsburg, up north to Robertson County, Scott County, Lexington, right. Richmond, Versailles. So it's pretty diverse.
19 counties.
But it's pretty compact at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not really spread out. As you've made your way around the district over the course of the last few months, what are you hearing from people? What's important to them?
Well, let me tell you what's important to them. There are three items. One, people want access to health care. John, they want health care that is available to them, accessible, as well as affordable. And right now, John, you have so many people that have to choose between having health care and medicines or eating. I want a Medicare for All program that's going to bring healthcare to everyone here, regardless of their employment or any pre-existing condition or their status as a worker. I want people to have healthcare, and I'm going to do that with a universal healthcare system that I'm going to implement when I get to Washington. Also, I want to bring jobs here, and most importantly, John, I want to improve and enhance our middle class. When our middle class was the strongest, back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, was when we were investing in infrastructure. We were building roads and bridges from the Atlantic, John, to the Pacific, from Minnesota to Miami. I want to do that again. And when I talk about infrastructure, I want to be clear, I don't mean just roads and bridges. I'm talking about increasing broadband and internet access as well. I want to bring to this country an FDR-style 1930s cooperative system that Roosevelt used to bring electricity all over this country, even the most rural areas. I want to do the same thing, John, with internet and broadband. And that means, John, also we have to in this country increase our broadband width. Our broadband width in America is really poor compared to some other countries like South Korea, Japan, Denmark. We've got to do a better job of increasing our broadband width, and I'm going to do that. And then third and finally, John, people want the dignity of work. I mean, they want to go to work and feel like, they have freedom and independence. And they can't do that now, John, on $7.25 an hour, okay? And so, I want to again, go to Washington and gradually over time increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour so that people can have the dignity, the independence that comes with working. At the end of the day, John, I want to make hard work pay. I want to reward hard work. And by doing that and giving people a livable, decent wage, we can make hard work pay.
Well, those are some pretty great items that you want to work on. Let's stay with infrastructure for a little bit. Again, as a reminder, this is the last week of March, and last week, as Congress passed the omnibus bill, generally considered really the last piece of legislation that's going to be worked on for the remainder of 2018, as a lot of folks come home and run for election or re-election. Right. The transportation bill and the infrastructure bill that the president has talked about since his own election, really hasn't gone anywhere in 2018. A lot of folks think that's going to be teed up, going to be one of the first things that you're going to be able to work on when you get back there in 2019. Reggie is elected to Congress, and he's there in 2019. What parts of that? Can you explain more exactly how that might work on not just roads and bridges, but the president has talked about, and they put in this omnibus bill close to $600 million worth of internet access. A lot of folks saying that's not enough. Some folks say that's just right. What do you think about that? Well,
that's certainly not enough, and understand that Trump's transportation proposal in his budget was only $200 billion. That's all he wanted to put in for roads and bridges. And John, that is not enough. He was asking states to pick up another $1.5 billion. And as we all know, John, our states don't have that kind of money. Mm-hmm. Most states are like Kentucky, financially cash-strapped. And so Trump is not serious about improving our infrastructure. We talked about a roads and bridges budget of just $200 billion. Mm-hmm. Okay, we've got to do more. And the $600 billion for internet and broadband access, again, is not going to get to the level we need. We need far more money because, as I said, John, we have got to nationally improve our broadband width. We've just got to do that.
Well, let's touch on a couple of other items and go in some different directions. Just in the last few weeks, the president has made or has announced changes to not only the foreign policy team, but also his national security team. He's nominated a new Secretary of State, a new national security advisor, a new director of the CIA. North Korea and Russia has pretty much dominated the first 15, 16 months of this presidency. It's taken up a lot of time in Congress itself. What are your views on where we are, where we're going? What should we do?
Well, I think you have to begin by recognizing that we have lost standing in this world. When the President of the United States can't even go to Great Britain, for a visit because they don't want him there, then we're in a bad shape because Great Britain historically has been our most devoted ally. Our president, has not filled 60% of all foreign policy positions. That means that we're really running behind in terms of, having information, having access, having knowledge about what's going on across the world. We aren't listening to our allies in terms of, working with them to develop a unified foreign policy a plan. The president's decision, for instance, John, to move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, really has caught the ire of some of our most devoted European allies. Everything he's done has been more geared toward alienating our dependable allies than working with him. So our foreign policy is really a mess. And as I said, getting out of the Paris Accord, another example of thumbing our noses at our allies. I just can't, I can go on and on, but at the end of the day, President Trump, just like in many other areas, has weakened the standing of the United States, and we've just got to do something about that.
As part of the bill that passed last week, major increases in funding on defense, and more so than we've seen in quite some time, nearly a decade or more. What's your feeling about that as a new congressman from the 6th District of Kentucky? What would be your feeling and standing on that much of the budget going to defense?
Well, I think as an elected official, you've got to protect the people of this country. I mean, security is your number one objective regarding in your role as an elected official. Having said that, though, we just can't throw money, to the defense. We have to look at targeted ways in which we can secure our nation, make sure that we can be ready and respond to any threat, but at the same time, making sure that we're not wasting money, we're not throwing taxpayer money away. I'm not sure we did that in this bill. I'm not necessarily saying I'm opposed to an increase, but I think the way we did it, without looking at where we need to perhaps improve or shore up some of our defense systems and things we don't have to put money toward, I think is irresponsible. Mm-hmm. Irresponsible leadership, irresponsible management. And so I think the whole budget, military budget, needs to be reanalyzed, and I want to do that when I get there in 2019.
I appreciate your views on that. I'm going to shift gear on you a little bit. I think that we can both agree there's probably been more talk in the gun debate than in our lifetime than has been in the past probably 12 months. There's so many different points of view. And is Congress going to act on this or not? Well, I don't think anything's probably going to happen much in the remainder of 2018 except more talk, and then hopefully we'll get somewhere. But kind of curious where you stand on the gun issue, not only in our schools, but as private ownership of firearms. What's Reggie Thomas think about that?
Well, I'm proud to say that I have led on this issue. I'm the only candidate in this race that has had the courage to really talk about the fact that we need to address this issue head on. And I've proposed 3 things. One, I think we have to have universal background checks. Right now, you can buy a gun here in this country, here in this district, in about 12 minutes. Okay? That is way too fast. I mean, we need some kind of waiting period. I'm suggesting 3 days in which we can look at not just whether someone has a criminal background history, but whether they have any kind of civil assault history, domestic violence, other forms of abuse. I think those things tell a lot about a person's tendency to engage in violence. So we need stricter waiting periods. Also, there's no need for military-style weapons in the public domain. AR-15s, AK-47s. Those are guns that are used on the battlefield. They're to be used in acts of war, not just walking around where they can be used in churches or in schools or in movie theaters. Okay? But my plan is not just to get rid of those. I'm going to implement a government buyback program that says we're not going to take away your money. Sell those type of military-style weapons back to the government. We will pay you for them, and then we will dispose of them as a government. And then third and finally, I do want to prohibit these sort of instrumentalities like bump stocks that are used to change semi-automatic weapons into automatic weapons. I mean, I think that's a prohibition that we have to have because, again, that artificially enhances weapons for mass destruction like we've seen in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to start talking about that. And those are common sense measures. Look, I respect the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was here before I got into public life. It'll be here after I got out of public life. And I understand, the importance of guns from, a family standpoint, from a tradition standpoint, for sport, for hunting, for security. I get that. And I want to continue that kind of, tradition and culture, okay? But again, people shouldn't be able to buy a gun in 12 minutes. We don't need military-style weapons walking around here in the public life. And we certainly don't need these instrumentalities, this type of equipment that's going to change the nature and makeup of a weapon.
Drug overdoses, opioid abuse.
Big problem.
Big problem, not just in Kentucky, but really in Kentucky. I mean, serious problems, but across the United States. Is there a federal role in that? Is there a role for a congressman?
Oh, absolutely there's a federal role in that. There's a federal role in that, John, in a couple of ways. One, I think we have to look at the providers and how much these type of opioids are prescribed to people. I mean, way too much. We need to get a control on the quantity that's provided to people. Because it's often said that the most dangerous aspect of addiction can be found in a person's medicine cabinet, where teenagers and visitors at home and family members can just get access to a person's drug cabinet and get these opioids out of someone's medicine cabinet. So I do think that we got to look at it from a provider standpoint and also from a social standpoint. You know, a lot of times what we see in terms of the addiction comes from people who just have no hope. You know, they're feeling a sense of despair. And so we got to look at issues of joblessness, of education, of poverty. I mean, all that feeds into the opioid addiction. And so I really want to address those kind of social ills at the same time I look at it from the standpoint of the quantity of opioids that are just provided.
Well, that's something I think everybody can come together on. But at the same time, I think over the last few decades that we could probably agree that that there's really a lack of bipartisanship in Congress today. That I don't think any Republicans voted for the Affordable Care Act. I don't think any Democrats voted for the big tax overhaul that happened at the beginning of this calendar year. What experience do you have that's prepared you to work in a politically divided Congress, or how do you get past that? Is it worth it to reach across the aisle and work?
Oh, absolutely. Look, our government was set up so that people with different ideas, different viewpoints would have to come together. I mean, the way our government is formed is that it depends upon working together, collaboration, getting different ideas together, and then coming out with some legislation that everybody can feel good about. And I'm very proud to say that in my 5 years as a state senator, I have formed good relationships, friendly relationships with people across the aisle. I mean, I work well with Republicans as well as Democrats. And just take, for example, the one bill I did get passed, my breastfeeding bill, which encourages mothers to breastfeed and says we're going to look at laws that impede a woman's ability to breastfeed either in the area of public accommodations or in the workplace. That was an effort where I had to work with Republicans to get that bill passed. And that's needed more in Washington. Mm-hmm. That kind of openness, that kind of availability says, look, let's sit down and talk. Let's see where we can find common ground. I've done that here in Frankfurt. I'm going to take that same kind of willingness to let's roll up our sleeves and work together for the good of the country. I'm going to take that same kind of attitude and approach to Washington.
Well, I appreciate your answers on that. Committee assignments are key, not only at the state level, but everybody gets committees once you get to Washington. What interests you most? What are you going to, I don't know if this is the right way to say this, but what are you going to key on? What are you going to try for? What are you going to work on? What kind of committees that you want to work on that's really going to be important to Central Kentuckians?
I want to serve on the Education Committee. That's the committee I've been on since I came to the Senate. Mm-hmm. That's my number one committee, my favorite committee. It's important to the people of the 6th Congressional District. I want to serve on education when I get there because in my district alone, there are 3 state universities. There are numerous public school systems, and education is just so important to this country. What frustrates me now is that we have a governor who just insults public education. I mean, it's like Governor Bevin just wants to just bury public school teachers and public education and make it non-existent. He talks about them like as they're thugs, that they're selfish. I mean, I just don't understand. I just can't believe we have a governor that is so critical and demeaning to a public education, as well as to pensioners, state workers. I mean, this governor has no vision for the future of this state. And education is the passport to success. And I don't mean just college education. I don't want your viewers, the people in Frankfurt, to misunderstand me. You can do very well in life without going to college. Having technical degrees, certifications, credentials, but that's all part of the education process. So when I go to Washington, I certainly want to serve on the education committee. That would be my number one choice.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I'm going to shift gear again on you. The president rolled out a tariff plan in just the last few weeks. A reminder to our viewers, this is late March, so you never know what happens. Things change quickly. What's your view on not only the tariff plan, but trade, free trade, and how it impacts Central Kentucky?
Well, I am for fair trade. I certainly don't want to see America get disadvantaged or come out on the short end of the stick on any trade deal. Having said that, once again, I think President Trump's tariff policies and tariff plans are bad for this country. I mean, obviously, there's very little I agree with the president, and I think he's mistaken in so many different ways. But let me tell you how his tariff will really impact Central Kentucky. You've got Buffalo Trace here. You've got Woodford Reserve in Woodford County. And his tariff plan really threatens our bourbon industry and our ability to sell bourbon in other countries, because those other countries are going to put high tariffs on bourbon and really reduce significantly our sales abroad. So it's not a well thought out plan. Well, I don't think much of what Trump does is well thought out, to be frank with you. And so I'm opposed to his plan. I think we can have fair trade deals. I think we can have trade that's a win-win for the United States. But his tariff approach is really bad economic policy for this country, and we've seen that. I mean, we've seen that in the stock market, and the decline it's had in overall capital assets because people are really worried about Trump's trade policy.
In the weeks that you have left before this primary, what are the key things that you're going to be working on and talking about?
Well, again, health care for all. Again, my jobs plan. Let's rebuild our infrastructure, minimum wage. And I have to tell you, I am going to talk about pensions and retirement security and honoring our public school teachers, honoring our retirees, keeping our word, John, keeping our word, keeping our promise, protecting state workers. I am so proud of the leadership that I provided in Senate Bill 1 and the work I have done in cooperation with state workers and school teachers and retirees to make sure that a promise made is a promise kept. And I'm going to continue to do that over the next few weeks. When I get to Congress, do the things that I said I'm going to do. That's the one thing people know about me, is that if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to go to Congress and fight for the people here in Frankfurt. I'm going to listen to what's important to you, and I'm going to carry that out and fight for you every day to make sure that your lives in this county are better and that you're better off years from now than you are today.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. We covered quite a bit of ground here today.
We have.
Are there some things that maybe we didn't get to that you want to address here in our last few minutes before we have to wrap this up?
Well, again, I want to talk about, let me go back and talk about my healthcare system for just a minute.
Sure.
Just imagine what that does if we have a Medicare for All system and the money it saves just in our pension costs, okay? If we don't have to worry about health insurance, which is a significant part of what we pay for pensions, that frees up more money to help shore up the pension system, make it more viable, make it more secure. think what it does for veterans. If we have a Medicare for All system, then we don't have to worry about veterans paying for veterans to get health care through the VA. We can then focus from a VA perspective on issues that affect veterans: PTSD, depression. Think about it, what it does for business. If businesses don't have to worry about providing health care to their employees, that's more money for them to invest in their products and their product lines and things that are going to enhance and promote their businesses. I mean, it does so much for so many areas of our country. More money for pensions, better care for veterans, more money to improve our businesses and our commerce. So I want your viewers to understand that is a big win for us. And every other country in the world does it really well. It's time for America to provide health care for all as well, and allow those monies that we spend on health insurance now to be used for better, more productive uses.
Well, we appreciate you coming by and visiting with us today. Reggie Thomas, Democratic candidate for the 6th Congressional District, United States House of Representatives. Thank you again for coming. Remember to get out there and vote on Tuesday, May 22nd. Remember also later that night, tune in to FPB TV, and we'll have live election coverage from the county courthouse. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.